Welcome to Community Forum. My name is John Gogliettino. I'm your host. This is another in our series of businesses, successful businesses in the area, and the different things they've done during their lifetime, and how there's now a variation in what they've been doing. So I want to welcome you to the show, and with me is Arthur Levy, CPA, and we're going to get into his not his complete life story, but some of it. So I want to welcome you to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, you're welcome. Let's tell us a little bit, before we get into any subject matter. We got some things down here, but tell us a little bit about your background, where you went to school,
Sure.
Where you came from. If you weren't born locally, and I didn't ask you that, I think you come from a neighboring state.
I am.
Yeah.
I actually grew up on Long Island.
Okay.
I had my children and lived there for a long time, and in the mid-'80s moved to New York City, and at that time I established an accounting practice. I had been a partner in a big accounting firm and had gone the traditional route that most professionals did in those days, and I decided I really needed to be an entrepreneur. I was much more comfortable doing that, and created my own accounting firm, which over a period of time became more of a boutique firm, not a traditional accounting practice. We specialized in handling women-owned businesses, which back in the 80s no one talked to, family businesses, and ultimately the restaurant and the hospitality industry. All of the people who you now know as celebrity chefs were my clients when they were starving and starting out. I think my biggest claim to fame, at least in terms of the public, is I got Bobby Flay's first job in New York.
Wow.
He's gone on to do bigger and better things.
Yeah.
And even to this day, I'm still on the advisory boards for some of the important restaurant owners and restaurateurs in New York. The practice grew over a period of time to not only New York, but the Northeast. And eventually it got to the point where I had more business than I could handle, and I couldn't get anybody to do the work. So I decided it was time to get out, and I merged/sold the practice to what was then the largest regional firm in the area, a company named J.H. Cohn, which has since become Cohn Resnick and is now probably the 8th or 9th biggest firm in the country.
Wow.
This is one of these rare deals where everybody was happy. They were happy, I was happy, and probably most important is one of my children, my son, who was in the practice with me, went to Cohn Resnick as a partner and is now the national director of their hospitality practice. So for him, it became a grand slam home run.
Yeah, that's great.
All right.
That's great to hear. But after you retired, though,
well,
so to speak,
no retiring.
No retiring.
No R word in there.
After you withdrew from this segment, that's when it gets interesting, right? Yeah. Okay.
I guess so. Although the restaurant stuff was very interesting.
Yeah.
It was exciting.
Right.
I mean, I didn't get to look like this for nothing.
Right.
I took a couple of years off. We were living in the city, and my wife and I were getting, galactically bored.
Right.
And her sister called one day and said they had just come back from Cuba, and perhaps we should go. And we've been fortunate enough to have been able to travel, pretty much all over the world. And my wife said to me, well, if we're going to go to Cuba, you have to learn how to salsa. You can't.
I was going to ask you about the Latin dancing.
We're going to get there.
Okay.
You can't just do what you've been doing your whole life at weddings and other events and that's fake it.
Right.
You really have to learn to do it. So I started to take dancing lessons, and in the beginning I really didn't want to do it. But as time went on, I got it and I enjoyed it. And we did go to Cuba, and we had a wonderful time, and I can just remember telling you we went to a Cuban salsa dance club at 2 a.m. We were the only non-Spanish speaking people in the entire room. I was never so scared in my life, and my wife said to me, no one cares how you dance, no one's watching you, no one gives a darn. And so we got up and danced and stayed and loved it. Came back, and I decided I was kind of into this dancing stuff, and we took some more lessons in another area, and it's worth a whole other program as to how this happened, but we ended up opening the largest Latin ballroom dance studio in New York. and I ran the studio for 2 or 3 years. And in the time, though, we decided we were spending too much time commuting up to Connecticut, where I had a bunch of grandkids and kids living, and ultimately sold our apartment in the city, moved up here. And the dance business is a late night business. It's also a young people's business. And while I loved, bossing around all these beautiful young ladies and being their boss, the fact of the matter is it really got to the point where it was too much for me. And so after, I guess, 3 years or so, I sold it.
So yeah, I was going to say you withdrew from that.
And I'm out of that.
So the question is, what are you doing now for? Okay.
Let me just take it to the end, or well, not the end, but throughout the years after that, I was up here, and I decided I wanted to still be involved in the business community, give back a little bit, and in that regard, I became a coach and a
business coach,
counselor, business coach and a counselor for small and family and women-owned businesses. I was a SCORE counselor for a while, but decided I didn't really like that. Bluntly, it was too much time spent on wannabes and not on serious business people. So I did the coaching and I did the counseling up here, and I enjoyed it, and I had a good time with it. But I felt I'd reached the time in my life where it's time to give back a little bit. And there's a company out of San Diego that I don't know if you've heard of, named Vistage International. They had been romancing me for quite some time to become a Vistage chair. And finally, this past winter, I agreed to do it. I went to San Diego, went through training, and I'm now in the process of putting together a CEO peer group advisory board, primarily in Fairfield County. And I'm just in the process. I've signed up a few CEOs, and I'm continuing to meet people, and I'm having a wonderful time with it. That brings you kind of up to the minute.
That's up to the middle break. So how does that, you've been doing a number of things, but I guess that was working up to it, where you have your get-togethers. I've known you for a while, but never really got there because there's always a conflict. I think I told you I have a conflict on Tuesdays, and you have a lot of your activities on Tuesday. Right. Now, these are open to the public. Anybody that's in business that wants to gather, it's like a gathering you do, right?
My wife and I run a couple of networking groups, one in Stamford and one that is now meeting in Danbury.
Okay.
At the Black Angus.
Oh, okay.
Actually, it's a lunch event. The next one is on September 23rd.
Okay.
And you can go on my website, which is the ROART, ROART group.com, and the information is there. Or you can just dial and go in and
just come in.
Search for Connect More,
right,
which is the name of the group. It's a meetup site as well, so there are plenty of ways to find it. And
so it's networking.
It's basically a networking group. We always have a speaker, and we rarely have the speaker who is doing the rounds of everybody else's events in Fairfield County. We find our own unique kinds of subjects and unique kinds of speakers, and we get a very nice turnout. And it's a really nice event. We met a lot of nice people that way. Right. It was a good way for my wife and I, who have recently moved to the Danbury area, to start to meet some people. Okay. And at the same time to give back
to the community.
You got it.
Help people.
You got it.
So you meet a lot of interesting people without mentioning any names, because you don't want to compromise people on air, especially if you don't have their permission to talk about them. What are some of the kind of people you've been meeting and helping in general, speaking in general without mentioning names?
I've done a couple of mediations lately. One for a business in Brookfield, who I obviously won't name, right, where two family members were really battling to the point where at the first meeting they had orders of protection against each other. Wow. And in fact, I walked in and there were guns on the desk.
Wow.
And I said, you know what, I'll be back in 5 minutes. Either those guns are gone or you'll never see me again. And it took several months, and I worked through their issues and worked through their problems and got it resolved. My attitude with those kinds of things are, when I'm done, I would like it if both parties either like me or don't like me, if one likes me and the other one doesn't like me, I didn't do a good job. Because remember, it's a mediation, you're trying to get to a conclusion.
Right.
So I did that one in Brookfield, I did another one locally for a four brothers in a family business. It was a bloodbath, but ultimately...
Not literally, but they're knocking their heads a lot.
Oh yeah, I mean, it's
Yeah.
tough stuff. I mean, and what happens is people forget about the business and it gets very personal.
It spirals downward to a crash. If something isn't done, the business will crash.
And I become more shrink than I am business advisor. And it's kind of fun. One thing I neglected to throw in when I was giving you my history was along the way, my wife and I created a non-for-profit in New York called the Family Business Council of Greater New York.
Oh, okay.
Which was a membership-driven, resource, educational, non-for-profit for family-owned businesses. And at one time, we had probably 500 family business members. This was something we did primarily to drive business into the accounting practice, but clearly it grew a life of its own. With 500 members, it needed its own infrastructure. It was just something else we did on the side.
Here's one from left field or whatever, right field, whatever. Where do you get the energy to do this? You're a CPA, and I know they were done in phases, but some people take a couple of years off or more, and it's a lot of this stuff you were doing at the same time.
John, I tell you, I did take 2 years off, and I hated it. I was unhappy. I've been married a long, long time, and my wife and I have been working together for probably 40 years. And we found that for the first time in all our history of marriage, we were having real trouble because we didn't have anything to do.
Yeah, you can only be on vacation so long.
You run out of places to go, and believe it or not, you do run out of money.
Yeah.
And we felt that we were much happier when we were working. I mean, even now, as I'm sitting here talking to you this morning, my wife is taking the Vistage training because she now wants to become a Vistage peer group chair.
Advisor,
So our game plan is, and they have 18,000 chairs across the country. No one's ever tried this before. We're going to be the first husband and wife team doing this. So, and matter of fact, I was at a meeting last night with some of the higher-ups from Vistage, and they said, gee, if this really works, we're going to use it as a model.
Right.
And I said, if this really works, and I have no reason to believe it won't, you're not going to be able to use it as a model because I'm going to use it as a model. So it's what we enjoy. I mean, I don't play golf, and I had a boat for a while, and that got old very quickly. And
people say that to me. Well, how do you do this TV show? Well, I don't. I don't hang around bars, and I don't go on a boat, and same thing you're saying.
Right. You need something to keep your mind active.
Yeah, right. And so I'm glad that you're doing this, and so maybe another couple of examples, whether it be while you were down in New York or local. Of your business counseling advice,
Well, probably
and again, you haven't cleared this with anybody, so I don't expect you to mention any names.
Well, I'm going to drop one name because I know he would be comfortable if I did it. Perhaps the most successful restaurateur in New York, although maybe not known so well in Fairfield County, is a gentleman by the name of Danny Meyer. Danny Meyer owns a bunch of restaurants and is most famous now for having been part of opening up these series of Shake Shacks, of which there's one in Westport and there's one in New Haven.
Right.
Danny and I started when he was 27 and opening a restaurant. He's now 57. And I can say
a few years ago.
I can say that too.
Yeah. Okay.
Because he does.
Yeah.
And we started when he opened up a restaurant which ultimately became the most popular restaurant in New York for God knows 25 years, Union Square Cafe. He hired me to become his accountant back right after he had opened this thing, and I didn't really know anything about the restaurant business. And we kid each other today that my success is because of him And I, of course, tell him that his success was totally because of me. But we both learned a lot from each other, and it was a tremendous opportunity to find out that, working with a client is not just bluntly selling them hours or selling them advice. It's in a reality listening to them and really learning how they operate. Danny has done some wonderful stuff. He also wrote a great book called Setting the Table. I don't get a nickel if anybody out there buys it. I recommend it to everybody. It's not a foodie book. It's a really a business book. But
these are the kind of things you should do, and like I've had experience during my time, where a guy that's let's say starts a pizza shop and does really well. So at the end of the year, he buys himself a BMW, and you can tell he's spending money he shouldn't be spending because he's not that successful yet. And then in the next year or two, he's closing the doors or selling out.
One of the things that worked so well for us, and one of the reasons we were so successful in the hospitality industry, is back when I started to do this, most restaurateurs had the reputation that they were bluntly stealing the cash. They didn't want to pay taxes, they didn't want to pay their people, they didn't want to do a lot of stuff, so they would steal the dollar.
That was the rep, yes.
What I did is I took these people and I said, you have 6 months to clean up. I'll show you how to clean up. And once you do that, if you don't do it, I won't represent you anymore. Because obviously I never wanted to see myself in handcuffs on the front page of the newspaper.
That's true.
And never did.
Yeah.
And I taught a lot of these people, and a lot of them are household names today, that a dollar that you steal is a dollar. A dollar that you invest properly in your business can be a heck of a lot more than just a dollar. The smart ones learned it. The ones that weren't so smart just weren't my clients anymore. It was a great lesson. I like to think we changed an industry. And now it's something that, through my son, it's now being rolled out, not only across the country, but really around the world.
Yeah, so a lot of these personalities you had some contact with.
A lot of them. I mean, you won't let me name names, but if I name names, a lot of everybody you've heard of. Watch all the cooking shows; they were all my clients.
Yeah. Well, I know Bobby Flay from the cooking shows. Even if and there's absolutely nothing on. Well, there's always a food channel, and you go to the food channel and you eat more than you should. But they're there and they tell you this versus that and.
Well, it's really been interesting as to what's happened with these people. They went from being glorified cooks. I mean,
exactly.
They would kill me and come after me with a meat cleaver if I call them cooks, but to becoming real celebrities, like movie stars.
Right. They've written books and they've got restaurant chains and
they've finally gotten private bankers and Wall Street to recognize that it's an industry, and they've been able to raise money and go on and do some really, really good things. And just think about how many people they employ. And that's the good side, with all everybody complaining about how expensive it is.
The economy is slow and this and that,
Restaurants employ more people than any other industry. And that's
because it's right down to earth. It's right down with the masses, so to speak.
Right.
They need every kind of sale going. Whether it's just a guy coming in and having a hamburger and a beer, or more involved than that, and they cover all the segments.
And if you think about how many entry-level positions, or how many kids who get starter jobs, start in restaurants. I mean, I have a niece and nephew. Both have college degrees.
Right.
They can't get jobs. I mean, one's a restaurant manager up in Massachusetts, doing very, very well. The other was a front of the house person in New York, a job I happen to have gotten her.
Yeah.
And she did very, very well. And while they said, well, I didn't go to college to become, a waiter or a waitress, at least
you were employed. You had that.
You were working.
You got your cash flow coming in week to week, and that's better than the person that's been unemployed for 3 years and waiting.
Right.
Right. And you got experience, doing something.
There are unfortunately, a gazillion applications for one job, and at least this way you're working. So.
Okay. And are there any particular people that all walks of life, all types of business that you're going to be doing this advising? I know it's the presidents of groups, but are you advising smaller companies or just the larger companies?
The reason we're doing it, my wife and I are doing it, is we are breaking it into pieces. I'm doing CEOs and business owners of businesses
established,
generally been around for 5 years, doing $3, $4, $5 million a year in revenue at least.
Right.
And
your wife's dealing with
my wife is doing the smaller
end.
companies,
right,
who've also been around 2 or 3 years, but the criteria isn't as great, and of course the cost isn't as great either.
Right.
And anybody who's interested can go to the website,
right,
vistage.com, VISTAGE.
Right.
All the information's there, or they can get in touch with me.
Right. Okay. We got Comcast rules, so you got to warn, that we just can't say too much.
Okay.
All right. So that's
no
that's
more
in general.
Commercials.
No, that's in general what. Now, you mentioned your kids and your grandkids. Are they all following in your footsteps somewhat?
In varying degrees. I have 4 children.
Oh, okay.
My oldest son runs a company in New York, and he's kind of a CEO or COO on his own.
Okay.
My second son is the partner at Cohn Resnick, and he's obviously doing very well. My third son owns a UPS store in Westchester, and my daughter has a big yoga studio in Wilton, Connecticut. My grandchildren are all over the place. My oldest granddaughter, I have 9 grandchildren.
Wow, God bless you.
Thank you. My oldest grandchild just graduated from the University of Wisconsin and is working for a tech company in the city. She's doing great. My number 2 granddaughter is a sophomore at Duke, where she has a 4.0 average, and
that's great.
As of
Going
now, is first in her class. Yeah, we're very proud of her. Although she says it's all luck. I don't really believe it. My oldest grandson is going to Marvelwood Academy here in Kent, where he is last year was considered the number 3 prep school basketball player in New England. So he's now fending off offers, although not from Duke or Kentucky.
No.
I have another grandson who is in his sophomore year at Wilton High School. And they have, those 2 guys have a little brother who's 6 years old, lives in Reading. And then I have 2 other granddaughters who go to the Friends Academy in Wilton.
Right.
Or New Canaan, I'm not sure. It's on the borderline there.
Yeah.
And 2 other grandsons who go to school in Scarsdale. So what that does with the 9 kids is when we have nothing else to do, which rarely happens.
You can talk about the grandkids.
And we actually try and get to see them once in a while.
Yeah, and you go see what's going on, if there's
we try
a play
at least go to games and recitals and events and stuff like that.
Yeah, so when it's slow, it's not really slow because you're always busy.
There's no slow.
Yeah, it's always busy. That website again, because I got 4 minutes left.
Okay, the website for the Roart Group is the Roart, ROART group.com. You can email me. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Arthur, ARTHUR, at theroartgroup.com.
Okay.
The Vistage site you have.
Right. And where are you meeting again for the Leeds?
The Leeds group will meet
Black Angus,
Tuesday, the 23rd of September.
Okay.
It meets the last.
Is there a back room there that they meet?
We are in the back room.
Oh, okay.
There.
So if people want to just mingle, they don't have to join anything right
There's
away.
There's nothing to join. There is a fee to come.
Right.
It's $20.
Yeah, we can't really. Okay.
I said it already.
All right.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, okay.
And also, it does not include lunch. You buy your own lunch, but there is a special lunch package they put together. It's the best bargain in Fairfield County. And we also meet on 1 day a month in Stamford, which I know is out of your viewing range, but for folks who want to come. And that group's been around for 5 years.
Right.
The one up here we started a year ago when we moved up here. And it was interesting because there was nothing like it here. And we didn't know anybody here. And out of smoke and air and just talking it up, we get 25 to 30 people every month, and not always the same people, which is great.
Right.
And obviously people enjoy it. My wife is the greatest networker, and she creates events and will absolutely make you feel welcome.
And you've got, what, an average of 50 to 100 people at each of these?
No, it's more like 25 to 30
okay, so no,
people.
it's not too
These
large.
venues can't handle that. I mean,
Yeah.
it would be nice if it happened.
Yeah.
But we try and keep it intimate. It's not just show up, pass your business card out, and leave. We encourage everybody to get in touch with others during the month, have lunch, have coffee, do something so that they really get to know each other. And we know
So not only is there some networking, but you also learn something because you have the speakers.
Yeah, and people will know if you come to a couple of meetings, people will get to know who you are, and sooner or later you'll be the guy they'll come to when they have an issue in your field, and it works. There's no question about it.
Yeah.
We tell people, don't just come, hand your business card out, and expect to get business. It's not going to happen. So
Yeah, that's true.
and she's looking at opening, maybe another one in Newtown. We'll see. It really
It depends on your time,
Yeah, I said to her, I don't know how many more days in a week we're going to have to invent for all this stuff to happen.
Yeah, you're doing it a couple of days now. Enough is enough.
Right.
Yeah,
That's good. And plus, we each do a lot of speaking, around the county on various subjects. There are a lot of organizations that, look for speakers to
That's
talk
how I
about.
know you from
Right.
the Kiwanis Club. You came in to
Right,
speak,
right.
so you do a lot of that. Yeah.
We do a lot of that. We both enjoy doing it, and we're all, we do it obviously for no charge.
Right.
And we're happy to come and talk to your group about a whole myriad of subjects.
That's good to know that it's without a charge for all those groups out there that want to have you come in and speak.
Right.
So I want to thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me, John.
Yeah, you're welcome. And
Good
I want
luck.
to thank the viewers for tuning in to Community Forum. Tune in next week, same time, same station, and we'll have another interesting program. Good night for now, and we'll see you then.